A divorced multimillionaire took his housemaid to an important meeting, but what she said when she got there left all the guests in shock. Jade Wright, with the morning sunlight reflecting off her brown hair and an expression of determination, stood before the large door of the Gibson mansion. Her hand hesitated for a moment before pressing the doorbell, a simple gesture that would mark the beginning of a new phase in her life. Beside her was a somewhat worn-out suitcase, not only filled with her clothes, but also with her dreams and hopes. When the door opened, she was met by Ryan Gibson, a man whose imposing posture and penetrating gaze could intimidate even the bravest of hearts. Jade, however, remained steadfast, finding in Ryan's eyes a challenge she was ready to face, her gaze fixed and unblinking. "Mr. Gibson, good morning. My name is Jade Wright. I am here for the housekeeper position. Here are my resume and some letters of recommendation," she said, extending the documents with a hand that fought to keep from trembling. The nervousness was palpable, but her voice remained clear and confident. Ryan took the papers without a smile, his eyes quickly scanning each line and word, as if searching for something in between the lines that justified her presence there. After a long moment, which seemed to stretch much longer than comfortable, he finally spoke. "Jade Wright," he began, his voice deep and measured, "this house represents much more than a home to me. It is a symbol of my success and, by extension, my business. I demand perfection in all aspects of my life, including and especially the way this residence is maintained. I do not tolerate failures, delays, or excuses. If I decide to hire you, I want your guarantee that you will follow these principles to the letter. Are you prepared for this commitment?" Faced with this degradation, Jade felt the weight of the responsibility she was about to take on, showing a slightly insecure face in the first moment of the conversation. However, the need and desire to change her current situation gave her the strength to respond, maintaining her seriousness and professionalism. "Mr. Gibson, I fully understand the importance of this job and what it represents to you. I take pride in my work ethic and my ability to fully dedicate myself to my responsibilities. If you give me the opportunity, I promise not only to meet your expectations, but to exceed them. I am not here just to work. I am here to contribute and ensure that every aspect of this house reflects the excellence you desire." There was a moment of silence as Ryan assessed the sincerity and determination reflected in Jade's words. Finally, he nodded, a gesture almost imperceptible but signifying her acceptance into a world so different from her own. And then he positioned himself. "Very well, Jade. You start tomorrow. Let's see if you truly have the capability to fulfill what you promise." The dawn at the Gibson mansion brought with it the freshness of a new beginning for Jade, who woke up early, anxious and determined to face her first day. The sunlight gently filtered through the curtains of her modest room, promising a day of possibilities. As she prepared, Jade thought about how every action, every detail, would reflect her gratitude for the opportunity. She knew the expectations were high, and that every step would be a test for her stay in that grand house, dominated by the powerful and renowned Gibson family. On her way to the kitchen, she met Lydia Gibson, Ryan's wife, a warm presence who immediately welcomed her with kindness. "Good morning, Jade. I hope you slept well. I know the first day can be a bit daunting, but I'm here for whatever you need. Why don't we start with breakfast together? That way we can talk a bit and I can help you get situated. By the way, my name is Lydia Gibson." Jade, grateful for the offer and the kind company of Lydia, accepted with a smile that filled her face and reflected her happiness. "That would be wonderful, Mrs. Gibson. Thank you so much for your kindness. I am a little nervous, but eager to do my best." During breakfast, Lydia shared tips about the house, Ryan's tastes and preferences, and little secrets to keeping the house in harmony. "My husband, Ryan, likes things in a particular way, Jade. For example, he prefers the library to be cleaned in the early hours of the morning so as not to be disturbed later, and he loves the garden to be immaculate. These are small details, but make all the difference." "Thank you very much for the tips, Mrs. Gibson. I will do everything in my power to meet Mr. Gibson's and your expectations and keep the house as expected. "Your help is invaluable to me," Jade responded, feeling a bit more prepared for the challenge that awaited her. Throughout the day, Jade followed Lydia's instructions, diligently cleaning the spaces and preparing lunch with special attention to detail. Lydia appeared from time to time, offering words of encouragement and appreciation for Jade's effort. When Ryan returned at the end of the day, Lydia made sure to present Jade and her work. "Ryan, Jade really worked hard today. She followed all our tips, and I'm sure you will notice the difference," she said, maintaining a pride for her employee that could not be put into words. Ryan, observing the environment and noting the details of Jade's work, turned to her with a look of approval. "I see that Lydia is already guiding you well, Jade. I am pleased with what I see. Continue like this, and I believe you will adapt perfectly to our home." Jade, relieved and encouraged by Ryan's words, replied, "Thank you, Mr. Gibson. I appreciate the trust and guidance from both of you. It is an honor for me to contribute to the well-being of this house. I promise to strive to do my best every day." A few weeks had passed since Jade arrived at the Gibson mansion. The daily routine was becoming familiar, and she felt increasingly comfortable with her responsibilities, thanks in large part to the friendship that was blossoming between her and the kind Lydia Gibson. One sunny afternoon, after completing her morning tasks, Jade found Lydia in the garden, tending to her favorite roses. Lydia, with a welcoming smile, invited Jade to join her. "Jade, dear, come here. I have noticed you have a special touch with plants. Why don't you help me with these roses? I have always believed that gardens are reflections of the soul of a home, and I would love to share that with you." Jade, touched by the gesture, accepted the invitation. As they worked side by side, Lydia began to speak, sharing a bit more about herself. "You know, Jade, this house might seem like just a collection of walls and expensive furniture to many, but to me it is much more. It is a home full of memories, joys, and yes, some sorrows. Ryan and I have always dreamed of creating a space that was more than just aesthetically pleasing. We want a real home where everyone feels welcome and loved. And seeing you working so hard, taking such good care of our home, makes me think that you also share this dream." Jade, feeling more and more a part of that world, responded sincerely, "Mrs. Gibson, since the day I arrived, you have treated me with a kindness I did not expect to find. This house and everything it represents has started to mean a lot to me too. I see the love and care in every detail, and it is a privilege for me to contribute to that. Your home is a reflection of your family, welcoming, beautiful, and strong, and I promise to take care of it with all the respect and affection it deserves." Lydia, upon hearing Jade's words, felt emotional. "Jade, you are already a part of this house and our family. Your dedication and care have not gone unnoticed. Ryan and I are very grateful to have you with us, and we want you to stay here for a long time to come." As the afternoon began, Jade and Lydia continued tending to the roses in silence, each lost in their thoughts. For Jade, this moment symbolized the beginning of a new phase in her life, a period of growth and learning. For Lydia, it was confirmation that her home was in good hands, with someone who shared her values and dreams. The routine at the Gibson mansion continued, and Jade found herself increasingly immersed in the nuances of the family's life. In the evening, while setting the table for dinner, Jade witnessed a moment that left her uncomfortable, a side of Ryan she had not seen before. Ryan and Lydia were in the living room, discussing something in hushed tones. The tension was palpable, even from a distance. Jade tried to focus on her task, but it was impossible to ignore when Ryan's voice rose. "Lydia, I have told you that this is not how things should be done. You always insist on your way, without considering the consequences. This has to stop." Lydia, with a calm voice that hid her sadness, replied, "Ryan, I was only trying to help. I thought that if we worked together on this, we could find a solution that benefits everyone. I don't understand why you always have to see things as a competition." Jade felt a pang in her heart hearing Lydia. The kindness and understanding always present in Mrs. Gibson's voice were there, but now mixed with a mediating tone that Jade could not ignore. Ryan, realizing his voice had risen more than he intended, paused, looking at Lydia. Lydia, you know that everything I do is for the good of this family and this house, but sometimes you need to trust my judgment. We cannot afford to be lenient. Lydia sighed, a gesture of someone who had gone through this argument countless times. I trust you, Ryan, I always have. But I also need you to trust me and my love for this family. I'm not competing with you. I'm by your side. Jade, after finally finishing setting the table, discreetly withdrew, leaving the couple alone. The conversation, though brief, revealed a complexity in the Gibson family's dynamics that Jade was just beginning to understand. The tension between Ryan and Lydia, a reflection of the pressures and challenges they faced, was new to her. Lying in her bed that night, Jade reflected on what she had witnessed. Yes, money can cover anyone in appearances, but in the end, we are all the same. Me being poor and trying to sustain myself with the little I earn, and they so rich but in an unhappy relationship, or at least that's what it seems to me. Lydia is good. She didn't deserve to hear those things. The next morning, the sun had barely risen when Jade began her daily routine at the Gibson mansion. The house was still wrapped in silence, with the first rays of light filtering through the wide windows and gently illuminating the hallways. Jade, with her usual efficiency, moved around the kitchen preparing breakfast when Ryan entered brusquely, his face carrying the storm of worries that seemed to never leave him. "Jade, is breakfast ready? I'm hungry and have an appointment soon, and I don't want to be late under any circumstances." Ryan's voice was cutting, harsher than usual, as if each word carried the weight of his numerous responsibilities. Jade, a bit surprised by Ryan's early presence and his rude tone, responded with her characteristic calmness. "It's almost ready, sir. I'm just finishing a few more things. I believe it will take a few minutes, but everything will be on the table soon." Ryan, crossing his arms, looked around the kitchen with a disapproving expression. "What is taking so long? I hope that with all this time you at least remembered to do everything according to the instructions." "I don't want to repeat the problems I had with the previous maid." Jade felt a pang of injustice hearing this. The previous week had been especially challenging, with a series of small setbacks that, despite her best efforts, could not be completely avoided. "Sir, I assure you that I followed all the instructions to the letter. I do my best every day to ensure that everything is as desired, and I will continue to improve." Ryan sighed, running his hands through his hair, a rare display of patience. "Jade, I'm not questioning your dedication, but you must understand, this house operates under certain standards, and I expect them to be maintained. It's not just about preparing breakfast. It's about maintaining order, efficiency, representing the Gibson family correctly. How can I trust a maid who can't even finish my food on time?" For a moment, Jade saw beyond Ryan's authoritative facade, perceiving the burden he carried. "Sir, I understand the importance of my position here and what it represents for your family. I will do my best not to repeat this mistake. You can trust me." Ryan seemed to assess Jade for a moment, his gaze softening slightly. "Very well. That's all I ask, and it's the basic thing I expect from you. It's time to show some initiative, and I will be watching to see it." With that, he turned and left the kitchen, leaving Jade alone with her thoughts. Jade finished the preparations. Ryan sat down to eat breakfast in a hurry, barely touching most of the food on the table, indicating that his irritation was not really about hunger, and soon left the house for an important meeting that lasted all afternoon. By the end of the afternoon, Ryan had returned from his major meeting at the company he managed. The tension in the Gibson mansion was reaching a critical point. Jade was organizing the living room when the sounds of a heated argument between Ryan and Lydia began to echo down the hallway. The words were muffled, but the intensity of the emotions was notable. Jade didn't want to listen to it, but upon hearing her name amidst the exchange, she had to check, seeing everything from the hallway, still a bit distant. Lydia, with a firm voice that Jade had never heard before, defended not only Jade's competence, but also the humanity that should remain in all interactions within her home. "Ryan, you cannot continue treating people as if they were mere objects at your disposal. Jade has been working harder than expected, and she deserves recognition, not reprimand. We need to remember to treat everyone with respect and dignity, regardless of their role in our house." Ryan, clearly frustrated and perhaps surprised by Lydia's firmness, responded with a sharpness that cut like a blade. "Lydia, I am responsible for maintaining the standard of this house and our life. Do you think it's easy? Do you think difficult decisions don't need to be made? I do what is necessary, and if that means being strict with the maid, then so be it. You don't carry the weight of this family on your shoulders. You're not managing one of the biggest companies in this country. I am, and that gives me the right to treat anyone as I see fit." Lydia, taking a deep breath, tried to remain calm, but the emotion was evident in her voice. "I understand the pressure you face, Ryan, but we cannot lose our humanity in the process. What are we leaving of value in our family if even in our home compassion is sacrificed in the name of standards? What do we gain from this? An impeccable house, but at what cost? Jade is not the problem here. The way we are living is." The argument reached a point of no return when Ryan, with a voice laden with finality, declared, "If you cannot support the decisions I make for the good of this family, perhaps you should reconsider your place in this house and in the life we are trying to build. I cannot allow your sentimentality to jeopardize our future." Jade, standing in the hallway, felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. The silence that followed was deafening. Lydia, with an impressive dignity, hiding the tears that wanted to escape, responded, "Perhaps that's it then, Ryan. If these are your true colors, if this is the future you desire, one where love and understanding are sacrificed, then I cannot be a part of it." Jade heard Lydia's footsteps moving away, each step echoing like the sound of an abyss opening within that family. Ryan remained silent, and Jade, still hidden, felt a mix of admiration and sadness for Lydia, a woman who chose to defend her convictions and humanity above all else. After the emotional storm calmed, Jade found Lydia in the garden, her eyes reflecting the pain of a difficult but necessary decision. The fresh afternoon air was not enough to lighten the weight of the atmosphere between them. Jade, driven by a sense of solidarity and understanding, approached hesitantly but with a sincere desire to offer comfort. "Lydia, I didn't mean to listen, but it was impossible not to hear. I'm so sorry for everything that happened. I know it's none of my business, but please know that you have my gratitude and respect. You defended the dignity, not just mine, but of all of us who work in this house," said Jade, her voice choked with emotion. Lydia looked at Jade, a sad smile adorning her lips. "Jade, you have shown me more humanity and understanding in the past few days than many people I've known for years. Don't apologize. In fact, I should be the one thanking you. You made me realize that I cannot compromise my values, even if it means painful changes. I'm going to my sister's house for now. She lives in the countryside, a quiet place where I hope to find some peace and decide my next steps." Jade, touched by Lydia's frankness and vulnerability, responded, "I don't have many words, Lydia, but know that wherever you go, I wish you all the happiness and peace you deserve. Your courage in defending what is right, that's rare. And please, if there is anything I can do even from afar, count on me." Lydia held Jade's hands in hers, a gesture of connection and gratitude. "Thank you, Jade. We will keep in touch, I promise. And who knows? Maybe this isn't a goodbye, but a see you later. Life has a funny way of surprising us." The two women shared a final hug, a farewell laden with emotion and silent promises of hope for the future. As Lydia walked away, Jade watched, feeling a mix of admiration and sadness. She knew Lydia's world was changing radically, but there was a strength in her that Jade deeply admired. Returning to the house, Jade felt different. At that moment, Jade didn't know how or when, but something inside her had changed. "I am ready to face Ryan if necessary. Like Lydia, I must protect my dignity, but how will I do that if I need this job so much?" With the house still wrapped in the morning silence, Jade was in the kitchen finishing the breakfast preparations when Ryan came down the stairs, the sound of his steps echoing with authority. He entered the kitchen, his rigid expression betraying the worries that awaited him that day. "Good morning, Jade. I need the house to be in perfect order today. I have a critical meeting at the company and I do not want to encounter any problems here when I return," Ryan said, trying to maintain a firm but fair tone. Jade, turning to face him with a tray still in her hand, responded with a serenity that surprised even herself. "Good morning, Mr. Gibson. Rest assured that everything will be as you wish. The mansion will be in perfect order to welcome you after the meeting." Ryan paused for a moment, assessing Jade's confident demeanor. "I hope so, Jade. These are challenging times, and the last thing I need is more complications. The company is going through a delicate period, and I need my home to be a place where I can find peace, not more stress." Jade placed the tray on the table, allowing herself a brief moment to choose her words carefully. "I understand, Mr. Gibson, and I will ensure that the mansion is exactly the refuge you need. Mrs. Gibson always said that this place should be a welcoming home for everyone, and even in her absence I will do my best to honor that vision." Ryan sighed, a rare gesture that revealed the weight he carried. Lydia always had a generous heart. Sometimes, perhaps too generous. But you are right, Jade. This house must be a home, a place of tranquility. I appreciate your commitment to us and ask that you keep it that way. With a nod, Ryan turned to leave but stopped at the door, as if struggling with a final thought. "Jade, your dedication has not gone unnoticed. After the meeting, we will have a conversation about the future. I believe there are ways to recognize your effort more significantly." Jade, surprised by the unexpected turn in the conversation, could only nod. "Thank you, Mr. Gibson. I am at your disposal for whatever is needed." Watching Ryan leave through the front door, Jade felt a mix of apprehension and hope. The conversation had revealed not only Ryan's vulnerability, but also a possible opening for new opportunities. She told herself, "Yes, it seems this will open doors for a new phase in this house, but I can't say yet whether this news is good or bad." The day was already giving way to night when Ryan returned from the meeting, his expression a mix of tension and relief. Jade, who had dedicated herself to keeping the house in order, immediately noticed the change in atmosphere as soon as he entered. Ryan found her in the living room, where she was making the final adjustments to the decor. Without preamble, he got straight to the point, a clear urgency in his voice. "Jade, the day has brought more challenges and opportunities than I expected. I have a business dinner tonight, and there is a complicated detail. Just yesterday, I mentioned that I was married. Given the circumstances, I need you to accompany me and pretend to be my wife." Jade, surprised by the unusual request, hesitated for a moment, but the seriousness in Ryan's eyes left no room for doubt. "Mr. Gibson, this is unexpected, but I understand the situation. How exactly do you expect us to do this? I am not your wife, I don't know much about you, and I am not prepared for something like this." Ryan approached, his expression softening a bit when he noticed her concern. "I know it's an unusual request, Jade, but the company's situation is delicate, and any sign of personal instability could be disastrous right now. I don't think it will be too difficult for you, since you'll just have to stay quiet and answer questions about us when necessary, which is almost never. Your presence by my side can convey the stability we need to show." Jade took a deep breath, gathering all the confidence she could muster at that moment. "I understand the importance of this for you and the company, Mr. Gibson. I will do my best not to disappoint you in this meeting." Ryan thanked her, a glimpse of relief passing through his eyes. "Thank you, Jade. Your help is more valuable than I can express. We'll do this together, and I'll be by your side every step of the way. I'll provide everything you need: a dress, accessories, anything to make you feel comfortable and confident." The decision was made, and Jade felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. However, there was also a spark of excitement, a chance to see Ryan's world from a perspective she had never imagined she would have. "I'll prepare then, Mr. Gibson. We'll make sure tonight is a success." While Ryan went upstairs to get ready, Jade remained in the room for a moment, reflecting. That night represented more than just a business dinner. It was a door opening to challenges and opportunities she never thought possible. Determined, she went upstairs to get ready, prepared to face what was coming, aware that from that moment on, nothing would be the same. The high-end restaurant's atmosphere was filled with expectations. Jade, elegantly dressed but feeling internally out of place, accompanied Ryan to the table reserved for the dinner with major investors. Among them, Mr. Palmer, the owner of the company where Ryan worked, stood out with his imposing presence. Right after the initial greetings, while everyone was getting settled, Mr. Palmer cast a curious glance at Jade, evaluating her as if trying to decipher a puzzle. Ryan, noticing the interest, made the formal introductions. "Mr. Palmer, allow me to introduce my wife, Jade. Jade, this is Mr. Palmer, one of our most esteemed investors." "Delighted, ma'am," said Mr. Palmer, extending his hand. Jade, a bit nervous, responded to the greeting with a shy smile and an expression that made her face blush, and continued, "The pleasure is all mine, sir." As the dinner progressed, Mr. Palmer seemed particularly interested in the couple's dynamics, occasionally directing questions to both Ryan and Jade. In a moment of pause, he turned directly to Jade with a question that seemed to test her acumen. "Mrs. Gibson, I have observed the way Ryan conducts his business with great admiration. In your opinion, what is the secret to maintaining both professional success and harmony at home?" Jade felt a whirlwind of emotions as she was placed in the spotlight. She looked to Ryan for a sign of support before answering. "Well, Mr. Palmer, I believe that both in the business world and personal life, the key is communication and mutual understanding. Ryan always strives to be transparent in his intentions and actions, which I think is fundamental to building both a solid company and a harmonious home." Mr. Palmer nodded, visibly impressed with her answer. "Interesting perspective, Mrs. Gibson. Transparency is indeed a crucial pillar in all our relationships, whether at home or work, or even in society in general." Ryan, smiling, looked at Jade with a mix of pride and gratitude. "Jade has a unique way of seeing the world, Mr. Palmer. She helps me stay grounded and remember what truly matters, and that's why we love each other so much and will continue to love each other for many, many years." Mr. Palmer, now more relaxed and smiling, toasted to Jade's response. "Mrs. Gibson brings a breath of fresh air to our conversation. It is always refreshing to see how simple yet profound thoughts guide both our business and personal lives." As the dinner continued, Jade gradually felt more at ease, realizing that her presence there was not just as an accessory for Ryan, but as valuable help that night. The initial nervousness gave way to a sense of satisfaction for having managed to stay firm and express her ideas. At the end of the dinner, as they said their goodbyes, Mr. Palmer made sure to compliment Jade again. "Ryan, you are lucky to have someone so intelligent by your side. Mrs. Gibson, it was a pleasure meeting you. I hope we can count on your presence at future gatherings." In the car on the way home, Jade reflected on the evening. The conversation with Mr. Palmer had been a challenge, but also an opportunity to show her own strength and intelligence. She thought to herself in silence, "I must remember not to doubt my abilities next time." Tonight was incredible. Lydia would have loved to see how I handled myself in front of that important man. After returning from the business dinner, the atmosphere in the Gibson mansion was tense. Ryan barely waited for the door to close behind them before starting to express his dissatisfaction, the serenity of the night contrasting sharply with the heat of his words. "Do you understand what you did, Jade? By interacting with Mr. Palmer that way, you've gained a place in his mind," he said, his voice laden with frustration. "He is a shark in business, always lurking for an advantage. Now he will be hovering, asking questions, probing. This wasn't supposed to happen." Jade, taken aback by the intensity of Ryan's words directed at her, even though she was only trying to help without any apparent negative outcome from her actions, attempted to risk a justification. "I just thought that..." "Thought? Jade, you're not here to think. You're the maid, not an executive. Your help might have put us in a delicate situation. He now has a particular interest in us, which can seriously complicate things," Ryan interrupted her, the impatience evident in every word. She tried to hide how hurt she felt by his harshness. "So, we'll have to do this again? Maintain this facade for your colleagues?" The question came out weaker than she intended, revealing some of her insecurity. "Of course we will, Jade, thanks to your little performance now more than ever." But understand, this is not an invitation for you to get more involved. You will do exactly as I say. No improvisations. We are not playing around here. This is serious, and there's a lot at stake, Ryan snapped, the seriousness in his gaze making it clear that there was no room for negotiation. The ensuing silence was heavy, with Jade struggling to maintain her composure. I only wanted to help, not complicate things for you, but I see I made a mistake. It won't happen again, she said, keeping her voice steady despite the internal turmoil. Just make sure of it, Jade. I can't afford any more surprises. Remember, you are here to play a specific role, and I will not tolerate any more deviations, Ryan concluded, emphasizing each word as a reminder of her place in that equation. Jade nodded, absorbing the reprimand. As Ryan walked away, she was left alone in the dim room, digesting the harsh reality of her situation. The night had been an unexpected dive into a world she barely understood, and Ryan's reaction served as a cold reminder of her true circumstances. She whispered to herself, I don't know what I was thinking. I am just a maid, a servant, and I'll probably never be more than that. I'm not Mrs. Gibson. I will never be as brave or intelligent as Lydia. She would be ashamed of me. In the quiet of the early morning in the expansive Gibson mansion, Ryan was in his office, the sunlight filtering through the tall windows, casting shadows over the dark wood furniture. He was on the phone, his voice low but firm, marking the tone of a man accustomed to being obeyed without question. Yes, Mr. Palmer, I believe a dinner here at my house would be perfect to clear up any misunderstandings, Ryan said, jotting something down in a leather-bound notebook. And of course, it will be an excellent opportunity to discuss future business. I look forward to seeing you and the others tomorrow at 8 o'clock. As soon as he hung up, he called Jade. She entered, her hair in a simple bun, her hands clasped in front of her, her expression neutral. Ryan wasted no time, getting straight to the point. Jade, tomorrow we will have very important guests for dinner. I need everything to be impeccable, which of course includes you. But let me be clear. Your presence should be almost invisible. You will serve the dishes, keep everything clean, and under no circumstances should you interact with the guests, especially Mr. Palmer. After the incident at the business dinner, we can't afford any more slips. Do we understand each other? His voice was sharp, each word loaded with authority. Jade nodded, her voice soft but firm, respecting the rules imposed, even though she felt the weight of the humiliation in them. Yes, Mr. Gibson, I understand perfectly. I will do exactly as you asked. I will ensure that the night goes without incident this time. I can guarantee you that. Ryan scrutinized her for a moment, as if trying to find any sign of insubordination, but found only obedience from his maid. Good, and one more thing, he continued, his expression hardening even more. After the men arrive for dinner, I want you to greet them and then retreat to the kitchen and not leave until all the guests have gone. If we need anything, I'll call. I want to avoid any misunderstandings. I understand, Mr. Gibson. I will follow your instructions, Jade replied, maintaining her composure despite the order being clearly a way to isolate her, to keep her out of sight, marking her position in that house not just as a servant, but as someone who should be kept out of view. Ryan seemed satisfied, dismissing her with a wave of his hand, turning his attention back to the papers in front of him. Jade left the office, closing the door silently behind her. As she walked back to the kitchen, she couldn't help but feel diminished by Ryan's orders, saying quietly to herself, well, I knew everything would eventually go back to how it was before. I'll have to act like furniture, completely invisible. I promised Mr. Gibson that everything would go well, but if it doesn't, will I be fired? Several hours passed and Mr. Palmer finally arrived, accompanied by 2 other important men for Mr. Gibson's business. Ryan invited them in, saying, please, dinner is ready and we don't want it to get cold. Come in, we can discuss everything while enjoying a delicious feast, he announced to the gentlemen. Everyone moved to the dining room and took their seats. Jade came from the kitchen to greet Mr. Palmer and the other 2 men, speaking only the necessary words to avoid compromising herself. Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to our home. Please feel free to call me if you need anything. Mr. Palmer looked at her and with slight indignation asked, what do you mean? Won't you be present at the meeting? Miss Gibson, please have a seat. Your presence is important to us, And besides, what concerns your husband might also interest you. I insist." Jade saw no other choice but to accept the invitation, even though it meant disobeying Ryan's direct orders. During dinner, Mr. Palmer, always the center of attention, talked about business and future plans. Ryan participated in the conversation, but occasionally glanced at Jade sitting beside him, wanting to ensure she stayed out of the focus, almost as if she weren't there. In a moment of silence, while Jade was serving more wine, Mr. Palmer decided to speak to her, saying with surprise, "You've been very quiet today, miss. As Mr. Gibson's wife, I believe you should participate more in the conversation. Please, we would like to hear more of your voice and opinions, because that is what our company seeks, to listen to people." Jade felt embarrassed and nervous, but seeing an opportunity in Palmer's invitation, replied, "Of course, Mr. Palmer. I will follow the conversation about the company, but I must say that I don't understand much about these things. This is more my husband's area," she said with a small smile. Ryan quickly entered the conversation, trying to change the subject. "Jade is a great wife. She helps everything run smoothly, allowing us to focus on what's most important. But Mr. Palmer, I wanted to talk more about the expansion to South America. You had some interesting ideas about that." The conversation returned to business, but that small moment slightly changed the tone of the evening. Jade noticed that Ryan was not very happy with the interaction, and she tried to make herself even less noticeable. The dinner continued with a subtly tense atmosphere, which became palpable when Mr. Palmer, noticing Jade's intelligence, invited her to share her vision of the company's future. Jade, seizing the opportunity, shared her opinions. "From what I've heard my husband say about the company, you are on the right path, but I don't think it's a good idea to expand to South America now. My mother lived in Canada, and she said that Toronto is one of the best cities for business expansion, with lower taxes to help the company thrive," Jade said with great confidence and firmness in her voice. "Of course, Toronto. How did we not think of that? Ryan, you should have shared the intelligence of this lady earlier. She might have saved us from that crisis we faced after launching that terrible product last year. If I'm not mistaken, that prototype was your idea, wasn't it?" Mr. Palmer commented, casting an interrogative look at Ryan. Before Mr. Palmer could finish organizing his thoughts, Ryan interrupted, his voice suddenly bringing silence to the table, standing up and pointing at the maid. "Jade is our maid, Mr. Palmer. She has no role in the company's business and knows nothing about entrepreneurship. I don't know where she got all this nonsense about Toronto, but I wouldn't trust the ideas of a mere maid if I were you. Sorry if there was any misunderstanding." Ryan's statement echoed like thunder, leaving a trail of shock and discomfort. Jade, caught off guard, felt humiliated but kept her composure. I only wanted to contribute to the conversation. I'm sorry if I overstepped my position. It was never my intention to spoil the conversation you were having." "Forgive me, Mr. Palmer," Jade said, trying to hide her humiliation. Mr. Palmer's reaction was immediate and intense. "This is unbelievable, Ryan. You placed a woman to pose as your wife at a business dinner. Do you have any idea how this makes us look? How can I trust your leadership when you make such imprudent decisions?" Ryan, taken aback by Mr. Palmer's fury, tried to explain. "Mr. Palmer, it was a decision made in a moment of desperation. I assure you this doesn't reflect my leadership capabilities, and I can ensure that this maid will be fired soon, and we will find a solution for all of this. Desperation does not justify deception, Ryan, and you, Jade, should not have been put in such a position. No one deserves to go through that, especially with the lack of kindness Mr. Gibson has shown despite your favor, Mr. Palmer reproached, recognizing the pressure Jade must have faced. Jade nodded, a mixture of emotions clouding her expression. "I understand your disappointment, Mr. Palmer. I deeply regret my part in this." Mr. Palmer sighed, his expression softening. "Your intelligence and knowledge are admirable, Jade. I want you to give me your phone number. It's always good to have such a good person nearby, and I know I will need to contact you again someday," said the man, who then, turning to Ryan, announced a severe decision. "Ryan, I hope you seriously reflect on your actions and their impact on the trust we place in you. You are fired." The dinner ended on a somber note, with Mr. Palmer making his dissatisfaction clear before leaving. Ryan and Jade were left behind, enveloped in heavy silence, each lost in their own thoughts about the consequences of that night. As Jade cleared the dishes, Ryan approached, his expression a mixture of regret and confusion. "Jade, I don't feel comfortable having put you in that situation, especially for what it caused. And I feel even less comfortable having to tell you this after everything we've been through. But your services are no longer needed in this house." Jade, even though she needed the job, did not lower herself to crying or begging. Her response was firm and determined. "What happened tonight opened my eyes to many things. Mr. Palmer saw something in me that I hadn't even realized before. I want to be more, to be bigger. And I know I can achieve whatever I want without having to pretend to be anyone's wife." Ryan looked at her with surprise and then revealed his darker side again, his tone seething with anger. "Then get out of this house. Go live somewhere else if you have a place to live. I can't believe I let you pose as my wife when it's obvious to anyone looking at you that you're just a mere cheap maid." The next day, Jade, now unemployed again, found refuge in the modest home where Lydia lived with her sister. As soon as Lydia opened the door, the worry on her face softened into compassion upon seeing Jade, who wore a distressed expression. "Jade, what happened? Are you okay?" Lydia asked, guiding her inside with a friendly gesture. Jade, emotionally and physically exhausted, poured out the events of the previous night, the tension with Ryan, and the final decision of her dismissal. She spoke with a mix of relief and uncertainty about the future, her words overflowing with the complexity of her emotions. "I don't know what I'm going to do now, Lydia. Everything happened so fast and I feel completely lost," Jade confessed, looking down at her clasped hands. Lydia listened attentively, her face reflecting the empathy she felt for Jade. After a moment of reflection, she spoke with determination. "Jade, you're not alone in this. I know things seem dark right now, but you are strong, and I am here to help." Lydia paused, carefully considering her next words. "Why don't you stay here for a few days? My sister won't mind, and you'll have a place to call home while you plan your next steps." Lydia's offer was a beacon of hope in the midst of the storm for Jade. She looked up, meeting Lydia's eyes, and saw not just an offer of shelter, but also a promise of friendship and support. I don't know what to say, Lydia. Except, thank you. Truly. Jade responded, her gratitude evident in her voice. "I hope one day I can repay you for everything you've done for me. You welcomed me from the first moment, and I promise I will find a way to repay you for this." When the phone rang, interrupting Jade and Lydia's peaceful breakfast, an unknown number appeared on Jade's phone screen. Answering it, she was greeted by an unexpected voice. "Jade, it's Mr. Palmer. We need to talk about something very important that cannot wait. Can you come to the office?" Curiosity and nervousness mixed in her voice as she accepted the invitation. Lydia, noticing Jade's anxiety, offered to drive her, providing the moral support needed to face what could be a decisive moment in her life. The journey to the office was a whirlwind of emotions, with Jade pondering the possible reasons for the invitation. Is he going to scold me again for what Ryan and I did? Does he want to praise me again for what I said in the meetings? Or is he going to complain about the food, saying it was all bad and he got sick after eating? Lydia smiled at Jade, finding her despair and anxiety amusing, which encouraged Jade to see that it was all just nonsense. Then she entered the building alone. Seated in front of Mr. Palmer in his imposing office, Jade listened attentively as he explained the reason for the invitation. "Jade, your ability to handle complex situations under pressure was remarkable. I am offering you a leadership position in the company, believing that your unique skills and fresh perspective can bring a new vision to our team. You will start in the position that was previously held by Ryan." Jade could hardly believe what she was hearing. The transition from a domestic maid to a leadership role in a major company seemed surreal, but Mr. Palmer's confidence in her potential was palpable and inspiring. The conversation with Mr. Palmer marked a turning point in Jade's life. She left the office with a mixture of emotions, clinging to the offer that would change her life forever. Lydia waited outside, anxious for news. Sharing the offer, Jade felt a wave of emotion. "He offered me the job, Lydia. I can't believe it." Lydia hugged her tightly, celebrating the news. "I knew you could do it. Let's face this new chapter together." This moment not only marked a turning point in Jade's professional life, but also strengthened the bond between two friends ready to support each other in what lay ahead. In the weeks that followed, Jade took on her new role at Mr. Palmer's company with determination and dedication, surprising everyone with her adaptability and business acumen.